close game. But yeah, they may be affected by the schedule. I mean, as far as that goes, given the fact that their last 3 games are pretty easy, like I said, the only team they play, Wake Forest, ranked 19th out of those 25 teams in the AP poll. Do you think that's going to affect them come playoff time, or do you think that they're still going to be like right in it for that national championship?
Oh, I think they'll be in it. Again, the whole thing has to play out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I like about this college football playoff is that you only have 3 or 4 weeks of this stuff instead of bringing it out earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just let the polls do what they want to do for the first 8 weeks or so, and then when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, bring all this, because nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't. I mean, it's not like you have AP, UPI coaches dictating a whole lot. You really don't, okay? Mm-hmm. But, the reality is as you get closer to the end of the year and the college tournaments, the football tournaments, playoffs, mm-hmm. then you obviously find out they're pretenders from the contenders. That's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'll say this. I think I'm developing a reputation for getting super existential with a lot of the points that I make. But I think the college football championship is one of the best championships in sports, is it not? I mean, it's sudden death, right? It's like
4 teams. Many years ago, what used to happen, and at least they got it to this point, even though I think they could go 8 deep, and they should, and I think it's inevitable they will. But at least they have the 3 games where the top 1, 4, 2, 3. With at least the 3rd game. At least they've done that. But for many years, we had to fight to get it to that particular point. We really did. So they call it the +1 is what they do. And I think they've progressed a lot to do it. But down the road, you'll see an 18 playoff. But I don't know, Kelly knows if I'll be alive to see it, the way they move around anyway. So, but anyways, we got our closer coming on in the next 2 or 3 minutes, Xavier McKnight, and he's the only one that isn't going to be talking about football.
No, we're doing a little NBA talk.
Yeah.
But while we have a couple of minutes, why don't we do a little preview of our upcoming podcast that we're starting next week?
You know what? Yeah, I'd like to do that. We didn't do it today. I'm glad we spent more time with Tony, but I think we're going to uncover it on Tuesday. But we're not doing a 15, 20-minute one. We made the decision afterwards today, Lewis, to do a full show, and Xavier McKnight's going to be on the line. And Xavier McKnight, before we talk about the NBA, what are your thoughts about Lewis and I doing that baseball broadcast?
I've not had a chance to go back and listen at the broadcast yet.
Well, you haven't, because we haven't done it. We haven't done it yet. We decided to postpone it until Tuesday so that we could do a full show, since we had a great sports exchange with Tony DeMarco. So you can't listen to what isn't there. But you will on Tuesday. How's that?
That sounds great, and I already know that the show is going to turn out to be a huge success.
There you go. Appreciate the early returns as far as compliments are concerned.
So, all right. Well, with that said, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Xavier, we made the decision we didn't want to do a 15, 20-minute one because to get it started. You know what? I give Lewis an opportunity with his FAU responsibilities over the weekend, to focus on that, because when he gets peppered on Tuesday and him and I slug it out with boxing gloves, we decided while the show would be great with guests on it, him and I could go ahead and stick on the boxing gloves and duke it out here, old school versus new school. What do you think of that?
That sounds great. I can't wait to see who ends up getting the better of the two.
Yeah, well, I'm the boss. I'll still get the better of it when I need to, but not so much. I'm just kidding with you. I don't use that just to kid around. You know what I mean? But I got news for you. Lewis holds his own real well, especially when it comes to being on the diamond.
Yeah, there you go.
And he does it well. So you're the black sheep, meaning that when I say the black sheep, you're the one talking basketball tonight. What do you think of that?
Well, I can't be more than honored to be in this spot, for one thing. And, there's a topic right at the forefront that we need to go ahead and bring into discussion.
Okay.
All right. Now, we know that the Los Angeles Clippers are now in the news about Kawhi Leonard and load management. They're playing their 9th game of the season tonight. Kawhi Leonard is on the floor tonight. He did not play last night, and it's a huge disappointment because last night the Clippers hosted the Milwaukee Bucks and reigning NBA Most Valuable Player Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Kawhi Leonard decided to sit out. And what we now know is that a medical note was written saying that Kawhi Leonard is not healthy enough to play in back-to-back games. So, along with load management, they are now also saying that it is a knee issue there. Now, Scott Lewis, I'm not one to question how injured someone is because I will take this into account. As spectacular as Kawhi Leonard was throughout the playoffs last year, towards the end, especially in the finals, he was having issues with one of his knees. But it wasn't chronic enough or it wasn't debilitating or severe enough for him to miss time. And it's the NBA Finals. He wasn't going to miss time. You were going to have to chop that knee from under him for him to not go out there and play in that capacity. And I actually understood load management more last year. Kawhi Leonard was coming off of a season where he only played in 9 games due to a quote-unquote quad injury that he took under his best measures, and he felt like he could protect his long-term investment. And this ultimately led to his departure from the San Antonio Spurs.
Right.
He ends up on the Toronto Raptors. And in the games that Kawhi Leonard missed last season, the Raptors actually fared very well.
Right.
That's another credit to Masai Ujiri and the great job that he does putting basketball teams together and putting depth on rosters. Mm-hmm. So they were in good standings heading into the playoffs anyway, and they play in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
But this year is different. This year is different. We saw you play magnificent in the playoffs. We saw you lead Toronto to their first ever NBA championship. You led the country of Canada. Toronto's a city, but it's only one NBA team in that country now, and that's the Raptors. Right. So you carried a whole country to their first NBA championship. You signed with the Clippers in the off season, and now there's news that's coming out saying that upon his agreement to sign with the Clippers, besides them going out and successfully trading for Paul George, which they did do, and it should be noted that he will be making his NBA debut, or he is expected to, at some point next week. Right. So you can expect this load management stuff to definitely continue, especially now that Paul George is coming back. But upon that, also, now we're hearing rumblings that there was an agreement in place that Kawhi Leonard would only play 65 games in the regular season. Now, as I said, I'm not one to question injuries, but I have to question this to a degree because when you're healthy, you should be out there playing. And if your knee is honestly that banged up that you can't play back-to-backs, why don't you sit out the entire length of time that you need to sit out for the knee to fully get healthy? That doesn't make any sense to me. You can play in one game, but you can't play in back-to-back.
Right.
I don't understand that. So that's a very twisted up way of writing this up, and it's another way that the NBA looks in a bad light right now. But, Scott, before I turn the floor over to you, mm-hmm. as down as I am on load management, I'm not as down on Kawhi Leonard as everyone else is, simply just due to the fact he learned this from his own former head coach, Greg Popovich.
Oh, yeah.
Who began load management, in particular, during the 2013-14 NBA season.
Right.
You know, that year the San Antonio Spurs won their last NBA championship and completely ran the Miami Heat off the floor.
Right.
And he was not only resting the aging Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili, he was resting Kawhi Leonard at times during that too. And this would only continue throughout the years. And this would not just be any random game of the week. No, this would be a part of those ESPN and TNT doubleheaders.
Right.
These were nationally televised games. And none of those 4 players would be playing in some of those games. And the only people who you had calling Greg Popovich and the Spurs organization to the forefront for this were people who were working for the television networks. Now, everybody's going crazy about this today on Twitter and fans everywhere because of what the players are doing. But why were we not having this type of energy for this when Greg Popovich first started doing it 6 years ago?
Well, okay, I'll address it a couple ways. Okay, number one, Greg Popovich, you're right, did create load management, but meanwhile his player ultimately left because they disrespected his health. Now, as far as Kawhi Leonard is concerned, he's definitely written a book on how many games he can play, but he does have the cachet that he did lead Toronto to a championship, so there won't be load management in the playoffs. There might be some games, but when it matters, he'll be playing in every game. So, I don't know. I think the whole thing is crazy. I think the one thing that's being lost in all of this, though, is Giannis was asked to comment on it, and he said, I'm against load management. If I don't get my work in, I don't feel good. Well, you're talking about a blue-collar guy, that where the attitude should be that way. But if I sat there and told you how many times I'm sick and tired of the NBA, the way they do things now versus when David Stern was running the show, that's another story. The NBA players took games off for national television, games that they shouldn't have done. The league is a complete joke. It really is. Now, I do have compassion for Kawhi Leonard. I do. I have no problem with it. If he signed a contract, okay, and he's playing 65 games, so be it. That's just what you have to accept. If this becomes a problem where every player, and you're opening up Pandora's box for it to happen, then I'll probably pay even closer attention to it. Lewis, what do you want to interject? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we saw the Heat kind of do this, and Xavier, you saw that as well. I mean, when they had that big three with LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, we saw games where, one or two of them may just sit out. You'll see them on the sideline with suits on. I think this practice predates San Antonio. I mean, Popovich is probably the one who popularized it the most, but Golden State had the opportunity to do it parts of those years when they were winning 3 championships in a 5-6 year span. So, I mean, it's a new concept, but I also think that it's the same way that in baseball pitchers are limited on innings because of their contracts. I think it's the money grab that we're going after. We need to conserve these arms because we're paying to win championships, and we need to conserve the legs of Kawhi Leonard and make sure that his jump shot's okay from long when we're in the playoffs. I think that's kind of what it is. It's just a conservatory effort to make sure that these guys are healthy when it matters the most. And you know what? Look, if the Clippers, and they're a very good team, and I really do like that team, a combination of him and Paul George, that's scary. Like, they're two. I mean, Paul George is someone who's resurrected his career too after a slew of injuries after that breakout a few years ago. But if you have two of them like that in the playoffs, and they wind up going to the Western Conference Finals and somehow manage to make it to dethrone the Lakers, and if that's what the matchup is, and they go to the NBA Finals and they win, I don't think anybody's going to be complaining about this. The problem with that, though, is that it may just become a new standard because obviously, as Xavier said, and as we've all seen over the years with how successful Popovich has been, resting guys during the season has in some ways paid dividends, and it may just continue because it's a model that's shown to be successful.
The only thing I'll say about the whole thing is, you know what? That was a good baseball tie-in to this argument, right? Xavier, you got to give Lewis credit for that one.
It definitely was, but it definitely was, and I'm going to let you finish your thought before I add more to that.
Okay. Well, I mean, the bottom line is the NBA has decided to. I liked it better when Stern was running the show. Adam Silver is a little bit more of a bit more laid back and is a players type of commissioner versus David Stern. Frankly, didn't care. He expected you to go out there and play all the time. And you're talking about what David Stern bailed the league out of bankruptcy when their games were on championship games were on tape delay. Neither of you two were alive when that happened. I did. I worked a restaurant job back in Michigan, and I got to watch NBA games after work at 11:30 Eastern time. But that's where David Stern ended up bailing that league out to where these guys are at. So, to me, again, my disdain for the NBA is what it is. I understand load management. I'm becoming more and more familiar with it. Doesn't mean I got to like it. If it happens to maybe a handful of players, I understand it. But if this becomes a league-wide trend, then what you're doing is you're taking away from the product, diminishing the value of those TV contracts, and then the business model continues to be affected. TV ratings go down, the domino effect, ... and you have an avalanche of trouble. And I'd like to see how Adam Silver gets out of that one. I think it's a joke, except in certain cases.
It's not only that, Scott. It's not only that, because you brought up many good points here, but I'm going to add one more thing of where this all is very unfair to, and it's the part that matters the most. It's unfair to those fans that are paying their hard-earned money to come out and see Kawhi